Free trials. That is what it took for my wife's friends to decide whether I was good enough to keep around. Too bad for them. I do not need approval from a group of people to understand my own worth. This all began about 6 months ago. Laura came home one evening full of excitement, talking nonstop about a photography program that was supposedly going to change her life. It was $800 for weekend classes, and according to her, it would finally unlock her creative side. I listened like I always do. I asked what the course actually covered, who was teaching it, and how long it would last. I even suggested we look at our finances and plan for it properly instead of rushing in. I thought I was being supportive while still being responsible. Turns out, that response was test number 1. I had no clue I was being observed like a science experiment until last Friday night. We were out to dinner with her group of friends. You know the kind. Every conversation turns into an emotional group session, and every marriage is treated like a shared assignment. They were talking about problems in another couple's relationship when one of her friends said something that made my stomach drop. Well, at least he did not react the way most guys would have, Ashley said. Remember when we thought he would lose it over the photography thing? The table went dead quiet. Laura's face turned bright red, and suddenly everyone was very interested in their plates of food. But I heard it clearly. That little slip told me more than any confession could. That is an interesting way to put it, I said, setting my fork down. We thought he would lose it. That sounds like something that was planned. Ashley tried to laugh it off, saying she misspoke. I did not believe her for a second. After being married long enough, you learn how to read a room. The exchanged looks. The fast change of subject. And most of all, the fact that my wife said nothing to clear it up. When we got home, I did not ask questions. I told her exactly what I already knew. The photography course was a test, I said. You wanted to see how I would react to you spending money on something unnecessary. She tried to deny it at first, but I do not argue with excuses. I stayed quiet. Silence has a way of doing the heavy lifting. Eventually, the truth came out. Her friends had convinced her that she needed to really understand the man she married. They told her she should test my reactions in different situations. The photography course was meant to see whether I was controlling with money or supportive of her goals. So let me get this straight, I said calmly, even though my jaw was tight. Instead of talking to me like an adult about money or your interests, you decided to run an experiment on your husband. The way she shifted and avoided my eyes told me everything. This was not really about money or photography. It was about respect. It was about whether I deserved to be treated like a partner or just another subject in their little mind games. It was not supposed to hurt you, she said quietly. They just wanted to make sure you were good for me. I almost laughed. Almost. I have been good to you for 3 years, I said. But apparently that does not matter if your friends have doubts. What bothered me the most was that I had passed their test. I reacted exactly how a reasonable husband should. I supported her while also caring about our finances. But that did not make it okay. The real issue was that they thought they had the right to test me at all. I went into the bedroom and started changing my clothes. Laura followed me and asked where I was going. Out, I said. I do not need a committee to approve my decisions. I ended up at a sports bar. Not because I wanted to drink, but because I needed space to think. This was bigger than one test. If they had done it once, they had done it before, and they would do it again. When I came home, Laura was still awake. She was ready to talk, ready to apologize. But I was not interested in excuses. I wanted the full picture. How many tests? I asked. She hesitated, which told me more than words ever could. How many? I asked again, making it clear I was not bargaining. 3, she whispered. 3 tests. 3 times my wife and her friends had set up situations to judge my value. 3 times I had unknowingly applied for a role I thought I already had. I nodded and took a moment to process it. Then I did something they clearly did not expect. I smiled. Well, I said as I walked toward the bathroom. I guess tomorrow is going to be interesting. She tried to say something, but I closed the door. Some conversations require preparation, and I had a lot to think about. If they wanted to play games, they were about to learn something important. I do not just play games. I decide how they are played. The next morning, I acted like nothing was wrong. I made coffee, read the news, and went about my routine. Laura kept watching me, waiting for anger that never came. That seemed to make her more nervous than yelling ever would. Around midday, I finally brought up something that had been sitting in the back of my mind for weeks. You know what is funny? I said casually. 3 months ago, You canceled our anniversary dinner at the last minute because your friends had an emergency girls' night. I remember thinking it was strange how fast you chose them over us. Her face drained of color the second I said it. That told me everything I needed to know. There it was. Test number 2. That was not a test, Laura said fast, tripping over her own words. That was just a coincidence. A coincidence. Funny how it happened on the exact night we had planned for weeks. The same night, she had personally asked me to make a reservation at the restaurant she had been talking about nonstop. I stood there and watched her struggle to explain it away. I could see the truth plain as day, but I did not interrupt. Sometimes the best move is letting someone keep talking until they expose themselves. My friends needed me, she said weakly. No, I replied calmly. Your friends needed to see how I would react when you chose them over our marriage. She went quiet. When I said we could reschedule, I continued. That earned me another check mark on their scorecard, did it not? She did not answer because she could not. The second test had been about seeing how I handled being pushed aside. Would I get angry? Would I demand attention? Or would I stay calm and understanding? I had done exactly what they wanted. And once again, I had passed. But what they did not expect was that I was finally connecting the dots. So what was the third one? I asked. She shook her head and said she could not tell me. That told me enough. Either it had just happened, or it was already being planned. That afternoon, I decided I was done waiting. I knew exactly who had been leading this whole mess. Every group has one person who thinks they're the smartest in the room. The one who always has advice about everyone else's relationship. The same woman who let the truth slip at dinner. Her name was Brittany. I drove across town and showed up at her office just before 5. She worked at one of those small marketing companies where everyone acts like they are saving the world by selling natural cleaning products. When she saw me standing in the lobby, her confident smile vanished. We need to talk, I said. She tried to brush me off, claiming she was busy. That was not going to work. 5 minutes, I said. We can talk here, or we can step outside. You choose. She chose outside. The second we hit the sidewalk, she started talking. Look, whatever Laura told you. She told me enough. I cut in. And I am not here to investigate. I am here to set boundaries. Her posture stiffened. She honestly believed she was protecting her friend. Like I was some kind of risk that needed supervision. My marriage is not your experiment, I said, keeping my voice steady. And my wife is not your project. Especially not for someone who has been divorced twice and thinks that makes them an expert. That landed hard. Her face turned red. I am just trying to help her, she snapped. No, I said. You are trying to control her. That is not the same thing. I took a step back and made myself very clear. This ends now. No more tests. No more setups. No more group discussions about my character. She opened her mouth to argue, but I was not finished. Every test you have run, I passed, I said. But the fact that you thought you had the right to test me at all tells me exactly who you are. I turned toward my car, then stopped and looked back one last time. And if there is a third test coming, you might not enjoy how it turns out. That night, Laura barely spoke. Her phone kept lighting up, but she did not check it. Around 8 o'clock, she finally looked at me with something that looked like guilt. She called you, I said. She nodded. Good, I replied. Then there are no secrets left. But that was not true. Not really. Because that night, something clicked for me. I had been treating the tests like they were the problem. Like if I could just make them stop, everything would go back to normal. But normal was the real issue. Normal was my wife thinking it was acceptable to let her friends interfere in our marriage. Normal was me proving myself to people who had no business judging me. I had been focused on passing their tests instead of asking why I was taking them at all. The next few days were tense. Laura apologized constantly. She promised it was over. She said she had told her friends to stay out of it. But something inside me had shifted. Every conversation felt rehearsed. Every interaction made me wonder if it was real or just another quiet evaluation. Then, exactly 1 week after my talk with Brittany, it happened. Laura spoke carefully, like she was choosing each word. You know, she said, maybe we should talk about your goals. Some people think you might be a little too comfortable with where you are. Some people. Not her. Some people. I set my coffee down slowly and looked straight at her. The third test was not coming. It was already happening. Some people think you are too comfortable, I repeated. I let the words hang there for a second. Then I laughed. Not angry. Not bitter. Just honestly amused. That reaction clearly caught her off guard. Let me guess. I said, wiping my eyes. Those same people think I should be more ambitious. Maybe start that business idea I mentioned once. Or go back to school. Push harder for that promotion, I said, finishing the thought for her. She nodded slowly, clearly unsure where this conversation was headed. And they probably told you to bring it up casually, I continued. Slip it into conversation and watch my reaction. See if I get defensive. See if I can handle criticism about my life choices. She did not say a word. She did not have to. Her silence confirmed everything. Well, I said, taking a breath, you found my limit. Not because you questioned my goals, but because you are still following their script even after I told you this needed to stop. I stood up and walked toward my home office. She followed behind me, asking what I was doing, but I did not answer. I had a feeling in my gut, and I needed to know if I was right. I opened her laptop. The messaging application was already open. Maybe she forgot to close it. Or maybe, on some level, she wanted me to see it. Either way, there it was. A group chat labeled Girl Talk. Her and her 3 closest friends. I scrolled up to messages from 3 weeks earlier. What I saw made my chest tighten. They had not just planned tests. They had documented everything. My reactions. Their interpretations. Their suggestions for what to try next. It read like a formal evaluation. Cold. Clinical. Detached. Test 1 focused on money and control. They noted that I responded positively but responsibly to the expensive photography course. No signs of financial manipulation. Recommendation, move forward. Test 2 evaluated priority and jealousy. They wrote that I accepted the last-minute cancellation of our anniversary dinner without conflict. No possessive behavior observed. Mild concern about lack of assertiveness. Recommendation, proceed to final test. Test 3 centered on ambition and motivation. They planned to analyze how I responded to feedback about my career and long-term goals. They wanted to determine whether I was stagnant or growth-oriented. I kept scrolling. They scored my behavior. They debated my emotional awareness. They argued over whether my calm nature was healthy or a sign that I was emotionally checked out. Then I reached the messages from 2 days earlier. One of them wrote that maybe they had gone too far. She mentioned that I had confronted her at work and that I had been calm, but unsettlingly so. Another suggested dialing it back. Then came the final message. One more test, it said. If he handles the ambition conversation well, she should keep him. If not, we have enough information to suggest counseling or worse. I turned the laptop toward my wife. Her face had gone completely pale. Data, I said quietly. You have been collecting data on your own husband. She tried to explain, stumbling over her words, but I raised my hand. I want you to read this one out loud, I said, pointing to a message from the day before. She shook her head. I am not asking, I said. Read it. Her voice broke as she read. Honestly, if he passes this last test, she should definitely keep him. Men like that are rare. But if he fails, she needs to know what she is dealing with. Keep him, I repeated slowly. Like I am a stray animal you are deciding whether to take home. The silence between us felt heavy. I could see her trying to piece together an apology, some explanation that might undo the damage. But there was nothing left to fix. This was not confusion. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a calculated invasion of our marriage by people who thought they had authority over it. You want to know something ironic? I said, closing the laptop. I would have passed the 3rd test too. I would have listened. I would have considered the feedback. I might have even agreed to set new goals. That is what grown adults do when concerns are raised respectfully. I walked toward the bedroom, then stopped. But here is what they never tested, I said. They never checked whether I would accept being treated like a psychology experiment. They never asked if I would tolerate being judged by people who barely know me. She was crying now, apologizing, saying she just wanted to be sure, saying her friends convinced her this was normal, saying she never thought it would go this far. The worst part, I said calmly, is not the testing. It is that you trusted their judgment more than your own. 3 years of marriage, and you still needed a committee to decide if I was worth keeping. I started packing a bag, not angrily, not dramatically, just folding clothes and placing them into a suitcase like I was preparing for a work trip. Where are you going? She asked. Somewhere else, I said. I need time to decide if I want to stay married to someone who treats our relationship like a group assignment. That is when panic set in. She promised to cut contact with those friends. She swore she would never let anyone influence her again. She begged me not to leave. It is too late for promises, I said evenly. You already showed me who you are. All of you did. As I walked toward the door, my phone buzzed. A message from Brittany. We need to talk. This has gone too far. I looked at the screen for a moment, then slipped the phone into my pocket and kept walking. I showed the message to my wife. Even now, I said quietly, she still thinks she gets to control the story. Like she can fix what she broke just by talking. I typed a short reply. You are right. It has gone too far. But we are past talking. Then I blocked her number. I blocked the other two as well. Every member of their little review panel was gone from my phone. My wife watched me do it. I could see the truth finally sinking in. This was not just about tests anymore. This was about respect, about trust, about whether our marriage belonged to us or to her friends. I can fix this, she whispered. No, I said, lifting my bag onto my shoulder. You cannot, because the damage is not just what you did. It is what you believed you had the right to do. I walked out the door, leaving behind 3 years of marriage and a woman who was only now realizing that some tests come with consequences the people running them never think about. I stayed at a hotel for 3 days. Then the call came. It was not from my wife. It was from another one of her friends. Not one of the 3 who planned everything. This one was quieter. The kind who sat back, listened, and watched instead of leading the conversation. I know you probably do not want to hear from any of us, she said when I answered. But I need to tell you something. I almost hung up. Almost. But there was something in her voice that made me stop. I never agreed with what they were doing, she said quickly. I told them from the beginning that it was wrong, but they would not listen. And yet you said nothing to me, I replied. You are right, she said. I should have warned you. I should have told Laura to stop. I kept hoping they would come to their senses before it went too far. I sat down on the edge of the hotel bed, suddenly wondering where this was going. Why are you calling me now? I asked. Because they are planning to double down, she said. They think if they can explain their reasoning, if they can make you understand they were trying to protect her, you will come around. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Protect her from what? I said. From having a stable marriage? That is exactly what I told them yesterday, she replied. I finally snapped. I told them they were destroying the best thing that ever happened to her. That you were the kind of husband most women hope for, and they were ruining it with their paranoia. And what did they say? I asked. They told me I would not understand, she said, because I have never been married. They said I could not see the red flags they were supposedly protecting her from. Red flags, I repeated. Like being responsible with money. Like respecting her choices. Like staying calm when plans change. I know how ridiculous it sounds, she said. I have watched them slowly tear apart your marriage for months. I kept telling myself it was not my place to step in. But when I saw those messages yesterday, when I realized they were rating you like an employee review, her voice cracked. I lost it. I told them they were toxic, that they had turned a good man into their personal experiment, that if she lost you, it would be their fault. I took a slow breath. And what did my wife say during all this? I asked. That is the thing, she said. She was not there. They have a separate group chat now. Without her, they have been planning what to do next, deciding how to manage the situation you created by standing up for yourself. My jaw tightened. Even after everything, they still thought this was about managing me instead of owning what they had done. They want to stage an intervention, she continued. Get everyone together. Sit you down. Talk about communication and understanding different perspectives. Like a therapy session run by the people who caused the mess. Of course they do, I said. I told them if they tried that, I would tell you everything they have been saying behind your back, she added. I was quiet for a long moment, processing it all. This woman had watched the entire disaster unfold and finally decided to speak up. But the question lingered. Why should I believe you are any different from them? I asked. Because I never participated, she said. I never voted on your behavior. I never analyzed your reactions. When they planned the photography course, I told them it was manipulative. When they canceled your anniversary dinner, I said it was cruel. When they started talking about testing your ambition, I warned them they were going to lose a good man. She paused. I stayed quiet to keep peace in the group, and I will regret that for the rest of my life. Her honesty caught me off guard. In 3 days filled with anger and betrayal, no one else had admitted fault without trying to defend themselves. So what do you want from me? I asked. Nothing, she said. I just wanted you to know that not everyone thought what they were doing was acceptable. And I wanted to warn you about the intervention they are planning, in case you want to stay far away from it. I took a breath. And my wife? I asked. Where does she stand in all of this? She let out a long sigh. She is confused, she said. She knows she crossed a line. But they keep telling her that your reaction proves you have control problems. They say a confident man would laugh it off and move forward. Control problems, I repeated slowly. Yes, she said. Because you refuse to be psychologically analyzed by people who have no business judging anyone's marriage. She paused. I know it makes no sense. They have convinced themselves that your boundaries are flaws instead of limits. I stood up and walked to the hotel window, staring out at the city lights. You know what the real tragedy is? I said. If they had just talked to me directly, like adults, we could have had honest conversations about any concern they had. Instead, they chose manipulation. I know, she replied. I told them that too. I said you were the most straightforward person I know, that if they wanted answers, all they had to do was ask. But that would not have given them control, I said. Exactly. We talked for another 10 minutes. She filled me in on their private discussions, their attempts at damage control, and their efforts to rewrite the situation as a misunderstanding instead of a betrayal. Before we hung up, she said something that stayed with me. For what it is worth, she said, I think she should fight for you. Not because her friends approve, but because she is about to lose something she cannot replace. I just do not think she understands that yet. After the call ended, I sat alone in the quiet hotel room. Someone in that group finally understood what was really at risk. But understanding does not always lead to action. My phone buzzed. A message from Laura. Please come home. We need to talk. I stared at it for a long time before replying. We have talked enough. The real question is whether you are ready to choose. She responded almost immediately. Choose what? Them or me? I wrote. Because you cannot have both. The intervention happened anyway. Not at our house like they originally planned, but at Brittany's place. Laura called me that evening, crying so hard it was difficult to understand her at first. They set me up, she said. I thought we were meeting for coffee. They had everything prepared. I stayed quiet as she explained. Her 3 friends had surrounded her with printed text messages, charts analyzing my behavior, and even a presentation about what they called healthy relationship dynamics. And then Hannah spoke up. Laura said, the one who called me? I asked. Yes, she replied. She lost it. She stood up and told them they were completely out of their minds. Laura sobbed as she continued. She said I was about to lose the best husband any of us had ever seen, and it would be their fault. She told them they were so busy hunting for problems that they created them. That caught my attention. And then what happened? I asked. She turned to me, Laura said, her voice shaking. She looked me straight in the eye and told me to stop listening to them. She said to keep my husband, that if I lost you over this, I would regret it for the rest of my life. Laura started crying harder. And then, I asked. They turned on her, she said. They called her naive, said she did not understand marriage, said she was too inexperienced to have an opinion. I waited. And what did you do? I asked. There was a long silence. I did not defend her, Laura finally whispered. I just sat there while they attacked the only person who was standing up for us. That admission hit harder than anything else she could have said. Even when someone fought for our marriage, she chose the group. But I see it now, she said quickly. I came home and thought about everything Hannah said. She is right. I should keep you. I should fight for us. Should? I repeated. That is an interesting word. What do you mean? She asked. What do you mean you should keep me? I said. Like I am still a decision you are weighing. Like you are listing pros and cons and deciding whether I am worth holding on to. That is not what I meant, she said. That is exactly what you meant, I replied. Even now, you are talking about me like an option instead of the man you married. I could hear her scrambling for words, but it did not matter anymore. The way she framed it told me everything I needed to know. Hannah was right about one thing, I said calmly. You are about to lose me. I paused. But not because your friends manipulated you. You are losing me, I said. Because even now, after everything, you still do not understand what you actually did wrong. I do understand, she said quickly. No, I replied. You do not. Because if you did, you would not be calling me to tell me I should feel grateful that one person in your circle finally decided I was worth keeping. I walked back to the hotel window, staring out at the same city view I had been looking at for 4 days straight. Here is what you still do not get, I continued. I do not need permission to exist in my own marriage. I do not need approval from your friends. I do not need validation from a group chat. And I do not need a recommendation from the one person who finally realized I was not the villain. But she was defending you, Laura said softly. She was defending basic decency, I said. The bare minimum of respect that should already exist in a marriage. And the fact that you think I should be thankful for that tells me you still do not understand how deep this goes. She was quiet for a long time. What do you want me to do? She asked finally. I want you to stop asking me that, I said. I want you to decide what you believe is right and act on it without checking with anyone else, without polling the group, without asking permission. I have decided, she said. I want to save our marriage. Then you should have decided that 3 tests ago, I replied. You should have decided that the moment they suggested evaluating your husband like a job applicant. You should have decided that when the only person defending me was attacked, and you stayed silent. I paused, letting the words sit. But you did not. So what happens now? She asked quietly. Now you live with the consequences, I said. Now you explain why your husband is not showing up to dinners anymore. Now you figure out how to rebuild trust that you dismantled piece by piece. Are you saying it is over? She asked. I am saying your friend was right about one thing, I replied. You should have kept me. Past tense. I took a breath. The man who would have worked through anything, forgiven almost anything, and fought for this marriage checked out the moment he realized his wife needed a committee to decide if he was worth loving. But I love you, she said. You love the version of me that passes tests, I replied. You love the version of me that earns approval from your friends. But you never trusted your own judgment enough to love me without conditions. I ended the call and turned my phone off. There were more calls after that. More messages. More apologies. More promises to change. But none of it mattered anymore. Hannah had been right. Laura should have fought for us from the start. She should have told her friends that our marriage was not their business. She should have trusted herself. She did not. And by the time she understood what she was losing, I had already figured out what I was worth. 2 weeks later, I signed the divorce papers. Not out of anger. Not out of revenge. Out of clarity. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Laura showed me that group approval mattered more to her than individual respect. The final confirmation came when Hannah reached out one last time. She told me she had cut ties with the other 3 women and apologized for staying quiet as long as she had. Then she shared something that locked everything into place for me. After I left, they tried to convince her that my reaction proved they had been right about me all along. They said a good husband would have laughed it off and moved on. That told me everything. Even in failure, they refused responsibility. They turned my refusal to be disrespected into evidence that I deserved disrespect. Laura made one last attempt to fix things. She showed up at my hotel with proof that she had blocked all 3 friends, deleted their numbers, and ended those relationships. I chose you, she said. I finally chose you. You chose me after I walked away, I replied. After someone else told you I was worth keeping. That is not a choice. That is damage control. She broke down then, finally realizing that the gesture meant nothing. You cannot undo betrayal. You cannot pretend away the moment you realize your spouse needed outside approval to stay married to you. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday. She kept the house. I kept my dignity. And we both kept the lesson about what happens when you treat love like a psychological experiment. 6 months later, I heard through mutual friends that Laura had reconnected with her old group. Apparently, they welcomed her back and immediately started analyzing why her marriage had really failed. Some people never learn. Hannah sent me one last message the day the divorce became official. I am sorry we could not save it. I wrote back. It was never yours to save. She had been right about one thing. My ex-wife should have kept me. But by the time she understood that, I had learned something even more important. I did not need to be kept by someone who thought I needed to be tested first. Real love does not require committee approval. Real trust does not come with evaluations. And real respect does not have conditions. I learned that when you treat someone like a science experiment, you lose the right to be surprised when they walk out of the lab.